A man shoves a wealthy old woman off a cliff thinking no one sees. But a young girl watches in silence, and what she does next will leave you speechless. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales that keep you hooked. Let's roll. The afternoon sun hung low, painting the cliffs with a warm, amber glow. 10-year-old Leela crouched behind a jagged rock, her sketchbook pressed against her chest. She came here often to this quiet overlook above the sea, where the waves crashed against the rocks below. Her pencil moved quickly, capturing the shape of a gull soaring overhead. This place was her escape. At home, her older brother Sam worked long hours at the docks to pay the bills after their father left. Their tiny house smelled of salt and rust, a constant reminder of their struggles. Drawing was Lila's way to forget, to dream of something bigger. She adjusted her position, her knees sinking into the soft earth. The air carried the sharp scent of seaweed and the faint hum of the ocean. Lila's dark hair fluttered in the breeze as she shaded the bird's wings on the page. Her peace didn't last long. A rumble broke the silence, the sound of tires crunching over gravel. Leela peeked over the rock. A silver car rolled to a stop near the cliff's edge, its engine idling. She frowned. People didn't come here often. This spot was too hidden, too far from the main road. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He wore a crisp jacket, his hair slicked back. Leela didn't recognize him, but something about his quick, jerky movements made her stomach tighten. She ducked lower, clutching her sketchbook tighter. The man walked to the passenger side and yanked the door open. An older woman emerged, her white hair tangled and her coat wrinkled. She stumbled as he pulled her toward the cliff. Leela's breath caught. The woman's hands shook, but she didn't fight back. She looked frail, her steps unsteady. The man gripped her arm, his voice low and sharp. Leela couldn't hear the words, but the tone sent a shiver down her spine. They stopped near the edge. The woman turned her head, her eyes wide with fear. Then, in one swift motion, the man shoved her. She vanished over the cliff, a cry swallowed by the wind. Lila's hand flew to her mouth, muffling a gasp. The man stood there, staring down for a moment before turning back to the car. He didn't see Leela. He didn't know she was there, watching everything. The silver car sped away, leaving dust swirling in the air. Leila stayed frozen, her heart racing. She waited until the sound of the engine faded completely. Then she crept forward, inching toward the cliff's edge. The drop was steep, the rocks below jagged and cruel. She scanned the base, expecting the worst, but then she saw it. A flash of movement. The woman clung to a narrow ledge, her fingers digging into the stone. She was alive. Lila's chest tightened. She had to do something. Her mind raced. Sam was miles away at work. Their house had no phone. Money was too tight for that. The nearest town was a long walk, and the woman might not have that kind of time. Leila glanced at her sketchbook, then back at the ledge. She couldn't just leave her there. The wind picked up, tugging at her clothes as she made up her mind. She dropped her book and ran toward a path she knew, a winding trail that led down the cliff. Her sneakers slipped on loose pebbles, but she kept going. She had to reach the woman before it was too late. Lila's sneakers pounded the narrow trail, dust kicking up behind her. The path twisted down the cliff, steep and uneven. She grabbed at roots sticking out of the dirt to steady herself. Her chest burned, but she didn't stop. The image of the old woman clinging to the ledge fueled her steps. The sea roared below, its waves slamming into the rocks with a force that echoed up the stone walls. Leila reached a flat outcrop halfway down. She paused, scanning the cliffside. There she was, the woman. Still holding on, her coat flapping in the wind like a torn flag. The woman's fingers slipped slightly, and a small rock tumbled into the water below. Leila's stomach flipped. She had no rope, no tools, just her hands and her will. She edged closer, her shoes scraping against the rough surface. The ledge was narrow, barely wide enough for one person. Leila dropped to her knees and crawled forward. "Hold on!" she called, her voice nearly lost in the wind. The woman's head turned, her eyes cloudy but sharp. She didn't speak, but her grip tightened on the stone. Leila stretched out her arm. The gap between them was small, maybe a foot, but it felt like miles with the drop yawning beneath. Her fingers brushed the woman's sleeve, Grab me, Lila said, louder this time. The woman hesitated, then lunged. Her hand clamped around Lila's wrist, cold and bony but strong. Lila braced her feet against the rock and pulled. The woman slid forward, her knees scraping the ledge. With a final heave, Lila dragged her onto the outcrop. They collapsed together, breathing hard. The woman coughed, her voice raspy. "You're just a girl." Lila sat up, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I couldn't leave you there." The woman stared at her, then nodded slowly. Her coat was expensive, lined with fur but torn now. A silver bracelet gleamed on her wrist, catching the fading sunlight. She was someone important, Lila could tell, but that didn't matter now. "We need to get up the path," Lila said, standing. The woman tried to rise but winced, clutching her side. "My ribs," she muttered. "I hit the rocks when I fell." Lila frowned. The trail back up was tough, even without an injury. She glanced at the sea, then up at the cliff's top, where the silver car had been. Whoever pushed this woman might come back. "Lean on me," Lila decided. She looped the woman's arm over her shoulder. They moved slowly, step by step, the woman's weight heavy against Lila's small frame. The wind pushed against them, but Lila kept her eyes on the path. She wouldn't let them fall. Halfway up, the woman spoke again. "My name's Edith Carver." Her voice was weak but clear. Lila kept walking. "I'm Lila. Why did that man push you?" Edith's jaw tightened. "He's my nephew, Victor. He wants what's mine." Lila didn't ask more. She focused on the climb, her legs shaking under the strain. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky a deep orange. They reached the top just as shadows stretched across the ground. Lila helped Edith sit against a boulder, away from the cliff's edge. Edith's breathing was uneven, but her eyes stayed alert. She pulled a small key from her coat pocket, her fingers trembling. "This opens my safe," she said. "At my house, there are papers inside, proof of what Victor's done." Lila took the key, its metal cool in her palm. "What's he done?" she asked. Edith's gaze hardened. "He's been stealing from my company for years, selling secrets to rivals. I found out last week. He must have followed me here to stop me from telling anyone." Lila slipped the key into her pocket. "We need to get you help." She looked around. The cliffs were empty, but the town was too far to walk with Edith hurt. Then she remembered. Sam kept an old bike hidden in the bushes nearby. For days he fished along the coast. She ran to find it, pushing through thorny branches until she spotted the rusted frame. The tires were low, but it would work. She wheeled it back to Edith. "Can you hold on to me?" she asked. Edith nodded, grimacing as she stood. Lila pedaled hard, the bike wobbling under their combined weight. Edith's arms wrapped around her waist, tight and unsteady. The trail turned into a dirt road, leading toward their house. Lila's mind raced. Sam would know what to do, he always did. But as they rounded a bend, headlights flashed ahead. A silver car idled in the distance, its engine humming. Lila's heart sank. Victor was back, searching the cliffs. She veered off the road, cutting through tall grass to stay out of sight. Edith whispered, "He won't stop until he finds me." Lila gripped the handlebars tighter. She wouldn't let him. The house came into view, its weathered wood glowing faintly in the dusk. Sam's truck wasn't there. He was still at the docks. Lila helped Edith off the bike and through the back door. The kitchen smelled of stale bread and sea air. Edith sank into a chair, her face pale. Lila locked the door, her hands shaking. She turned to Edith. "Sam will be home soon. He can drive you to a doctor." Edith shook her head. "No doctors yet. If Victor knows I'm alive, he'll come after me again. We need those papers first." Lila stared at her. This wasn't just about saving someone anymore. It was bigger, darker. She pulled the key from her pocket, holding it up. "Where's your house?" she asked. Edith pointed east. 2 miles down the coast, a white mansion with iron gates. Lila nodded. She didn't know how they'd get there, but she knew one thing. Victor wouldn't win. Not if she could help it. The kitchen was dim, lit only by a flickering bulb above the sink. Lila stood by the locked door, peering through a crack in the curtains. The silver car hadn't followed them, but the quiet felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. Edith sat at the table, her hands pressed against her bruised ribs. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes stayed fierce. Leela turned to her. "Sam should be home any minute. He'll know how to get to your house." Edith nodded, her fingers tapping the wood. "We can't wait long. Victor's clever. He'll figure out I didn't die soon enough." Leela crossed to the counter, filling a glass with water from a chipped pitcher. She handed it to Edith, who took it with a shaky grip. "Why does he want you gone so bad?" Leela asked. Edith sipped the water, then set it down. "I own Carver Shipping. It's been in my family for decades. Victor's my sister's son. He worked for me, climbed the ranks. I trusted him with the books. Then I found out he'd been selling our trade routes to competitors. Millions lost, all to line his pockets." Lila's eyes widened. "And he thinks killing you fixes that?" Edith's lips pressed thin. "He thinks it buries the evidence. With me gone, he'd take over." The rumble of an engine cut through the silence. Lila darted back to the window. Sam's rusty truck pulled into the yard, its headlights sweeping the grass. Relief washed over her. She unlocked the door as Sam stepped inside, his work boots thudding on the floor. He was tall, with rough hands and tired eyes from long shifts unloading cargo. "Leela, why's the bike out?" he started, then froze when he saw Edith. "Who's this?" Leela shut the door behind him. "Her name's Edith. I found her at the cliffs. Someone pushed her off. She's hurt." Sam's brow furrowed. He dropped his keys on the counter and knelt beside Edith, checking her over. "You need a doctor," he said. Edith shook her head. "Not yet. I need something from my house first. Papers that prove my nephew's a thief." Sam stood, rubbing his neck. "Your nephew did this?" Edith met his gaze. "Yes. And he'll come looking if he knows I'm alive." Sam glanced at Lila, then back at Edith. "This sounds like trouble we don't need." Lila stepped forward. "We can't just leave her, Sam. She'd be dead if I didn't help." He sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "Fine, where's this house?" Edith pointed east again. 2 miles down the coast, white mansion, iron gates." Sam grabbed his keys. "We'll take the truck, but we're quick about it, in and out." Lila nodded, grabbing her jacket. Edith struggled to her feet, leaning on the table. Sam moved to help her, but she waved him off. "I can walk. Let's go." They piled into the truck, Edith in the middle, Leela by the window. The engine sputtered to life and they rolled out, tires crunching over gravel. The road hugged the coastline, cliffs on one side, the dark sea on the other. Stars dotted the sky, but clouds loomed in the distance. Sam kept the headlights low, his hands tight on the wheel. "If this guy's dangerous, we're not sticking around," he said. Edith clutched the key Lila had returned to her. "The safe's in my study, 2nd floor. We get the papers, then you can drop me somewhere safe." Lila watched the shadows outside, her mind racing. Victor's silver car could be anywhere. They reached the mansion faster than expected. It loomed against the night, white walls glowing under the moon, iron gates slightly ajar. Sam slowed the truck. "That's not a good sign," he muttered. "The gates should have been locked." Leela squinted through the windshield. A light flickered in an upstairs window. "Someone's here," she whispered. Edith's face hardened. "Victor. He must have come to cover his tracks." Sam parked behind a row of shrubs, cutting the engine. "We can't just walk in if he's there." Leela unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm small. I can sneak in, get the papers." Sam grabbed her arm. "No way. You're not going near that guy." Edith spoke up. "She's right, Sam. Victor knows my face. Maybe yours, if he's been watching. Leela's a stranger to him. She's our best shot." Sam hesitated, his jaw tight. "You get caught, you run. Promise me." Leela nodded. "I promise." Edith handed her the key. "Studies up the stairs, 3rd door on the left. Safes behind a painting of a ship. Combinations 14, 29, 3. Lila slipped out of the truck, her heart pounding. She crept through the gate, sticking to the shadows of the manicured lawn. The mansion's front door was cracked open, a faint hum of voices drifting out. She ducked low, moving around to a side entrance, a glass door to a patio. It was unlocked. She eased it open and stepped inside, the plush carpet muffling her steps. The house smelled of polish and old wood, a world away from her own. She found the stairs, wide and curving, and climbed them one by one. At the top, a hallway stretched out, lined with portraits and heavy doors. Light spilled from the third door on the left. Leela pressed herself against the wall, listening. A man's voice, Victor's, came through, sharp and angry. "She's not here, but she'll turn up. Burn those ledgers now." Another voice, quieter, replied, "Yes, sir." Lila's chest tightened. They were destroying evidence. She waited until footsteps faded, then slipped into the study. The room was grand, with shelves of books and a massive desk. A painting of a ship hung above it. She pushed it aside, revealing a small safe. Her fingers fumbled with the dial. 14, 29, 3. The lock clicked. She pulled it open and grabbed a thick folder inside, stuffed with documents. Voices grew louder outside. Leela shoved the folder into her jacket, closed the safe and swung the painting back. She darted to the window, peering out. Sam's truck was still hidden, but a second car, a black van, had pulled up beside Victor's silver one. More men were here. She couldn't go back the way she came. Her eyes landed on a balcony just outside the study. She climbed out, shutting the glass door behind her, and crouched low. Below, Victor stepped onto the lawn, barking orders. "Search the cliffs again. She's injured. She can't have gone far." Leela held her breath, the folder pressing against her ribs. She'd gotten what they needed, but now she had to get out. The balcony overlooked a trellis covered in vines. It wasn't sturdy, but it was her only way down. She gripped the edge and lowered herself, praying it would hold. Leela clung to the trellis, her fingers digging into the thick vines. The wood creaked under her weight, but it held. She moved fast, her sneakers finding footholds as she descended. The folder of papers scratched against her chest inside her jacket. Below, Victor's voice carried across the lawn, barking at his men. "Check the roads, too. She's got help. I can feel it." Leela's heart thudded. She dropped the last few feet, landing in a crouch behind a hedge. The black van's engine growled nearby, its headlights cutting through the dark. She peeked out. Sam's truck was still tucked behind the shrubs, out of sight. Victor paced near his silver car, a phone pressed to his ear. Two men fanned out toward the cliffs, while another headed for the gate. Leela needed to move. She darted along the hedge, keeping low, until she reached a cluster of trees near the driveway. The black van rolled past, slow and menacing. She waited until it turned, then sprinted for the truck. Sam swung the door open as she neared. "Get in," he hissed. Leela scrambled inside, slamming the door shut. Edith leaned forward from the middle seat, her face tense. "Did you get it?" Leela pulled the folder from her jacket and handed it over. "Right here." Edith flicked it open, scanning the pages. Contracts, bank records, handwritten notes. "This is it," she said, her voice firm despite her pain. "Everything I need to bury him." Sam started the engine, keeping the lights off. "We're not safe yet. They're everywhere." He eased the truck backward, weaving through the shrubs until they hit a narrow side path. The path wound through a patch of woods, branches scraping the truck's sides. Leela gripped the seat as they bounced over roots. "Where are we going?" she asked. Sam kept his eyes on the trail. "Old fishing shed by the pier. No one uses it anymore. We can hide there till morning." Edith nodded. "Good. I need time to think. Victor's men won't stop searching tonight." The truck jolted over a dip, and Edith winced, clutching her side. Lila glanced at her. "You're hurt worse than you're saying." Edith forced a thin smile. "I'll manage. We've got bigger problems." They reached the shed just as the moon climbed higher. It was a weathered shack, half hidden by dunes, with a sagging roof and peeling paint. Sam parked behind it, cutting the engine. He helped Edith out, her step slow and stiff. Leela grabbed a flashlight from the glove box and led the way inside. The air smelled of damp wood and fish. A rickety table sat in the corner, flanked by crates. Sam settled Edith onto one, then turned to Lila. "You're crazy, you know that? Climbing into that house like some spy?" Lila shrugged, setting the flashlight on the table. "Had to. They were burning stuff. We'd have nothing left to prove he's guilty." Edith looked up, her eyes sharp. You saw them burning papers? Lila nodded. Victor told someone to do it. Said you'd turn up eventually. Edith's jaw tightened. He's scared. That's why he's here. He knows I've got something on him now. Sam crossed his arms. So what's the plan? We can't sit here forever. Edith spread the folder's contents across the table. Letters, ledgers, a map marked with shipping lanes. These show Victor sold our routes to a rival company, Horizon Freight. Dates, payments, even a deal to sink one of our ships for insurance money. I was going to the board tomorrow with this. Sam whistled low. That's heavy. But how do we use it, if he's hunting you? Edith tapped a letter. My lawyer, Clara Dunn. She's in town. If we get this to her, she'll file it with the courts before Victor can stop us. Leela frowned. Town's miles away, and he's got men on the roads. Sam paced, thinking. There's a boat at the pier, old, but it runs. I fix it up sometimes. We could take the water, avoid the roads altogether. Edith raised an eyebrow. You're full of surprises. Sam grinned faintly. Comes with living out here. Lila grabbed the flashlight. I'll check it, make sure it's ready. Sam nodded. Be quick and stay low. She slipped outside, the night air cool against her skin. The pier was a short walk, its wooden planks creaking underfoot. The boat bobbed in the shallows, a small skiff with chipped blue paint. Leela climbed aboard, shining the light over the engine. It looked rough, but Sam had patched it well. A tarp covered a pile of gear in the back, nets, a radio, a flare gun. She tested the starter, it coughed, then hummed to life. Good enough. She killed it and turned to head back. A shadow moved near the dunes. Lila froze, dropping behind the boat's edge. Footsteps crunched closer. 2 men, their voices low. Boss says check the pier. She might have gone for the water. The other grunted. Wasted time. She's probably dead in the surf. They split up, one heading toward the shed, the other nearing the boat. Lila's pulse raced. She grabbed the flare gun from under the tarp, her hands slick with sweat. The man's boots hit the pier, his flashlight beam swinging her way. She aimed and fired. A bright red streak shot into the sky, lighting up the night. The man yelled, stumbling back. Leela bolted, racing for the shed. The second man shouted behind her, Over here! She burst through the door, breathless. They found us! Sam grabbed a crowbar from a crate. Get Edith to the boat, I'll hold them off. Edith stood, clutching the folder. No time to argue, she said, limping toward the exit. Lila pulled her along, the flare's glow fading overhead. They reached the pier as Sam's shouts echoed behind them. The first man charged from the dunes, a wrench in his hand. Lila pushed Edith into the boat and jumped in, starting the engine. It sputtered, then roared. The man lunged, grabbing the rail. Lila swung the flashlight, cracking it against his knuckles. He cursed and fell back into the water. She gunned the throttle, the skiff lurching forward. Edith gripped the side, the folder tight against her chest. Nice swing, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. The boat cut through the waves, the shore shrinking behind them. Sam emerged on the pier, wrestling the second man off him. He waved them on, yelling, Go! Lila steered east, the town's lights faint on the horizon. Victor's men would follow, but the water gave them a head start. Edith leaned back, her face pale but determined. We're not done yet, she said. Lila nodded, her hands firm on the wheel. They had the proof. Now they had to deliver it. The skiff sliced through the dark water, its engine buzzing loud against the crashing waves. Leela kept her hands steady on the wheel, her eyes locked on the faint glow of town ahead. Edith sat beside her, the folder of evidence clutched tight, her coat soaked from sea spray. The wind whipped through the boat, carrying the salty tang of the ocean. Behind them, the pier faded into the night, Sam's figure lost in the shadows as he held off Victor's men. Lila's chest tightened. She wanted to turn back for him, but Edith's voice cut through her thoughts. Keep going. He'll catch up. The boat rocked as a wave hit, jarring Edith against the side. She grunted, pressing a hand to her ribs. Leela glanced at her. You okay? Edith nodded, though her face was drawn tight. I've been through worse. Just get us to the harbor. Lila pushed the throttle harder, the skiff picking up speed. The town's lights grew brighter, docks, warehouses, a cluster of boats bobbing in the distance. Clara Dunn, Edith's lawyer was their goal. If they could reach her, Victor's crimes would hit the courts by morning. A low rumble sounded over the water. Lila turned her head. A larger boat surged from the darkness, its hull black and sleek, cutting toward them. Two figures stood on deck, one aiming a spotlight. The beam swept across the waves, landing on the skiff. Edith cursed under her breath. Victor's men! They've got a patrol boat! Lila's stomach dropped. The skiff was fast, but not fast enough to outrun that. She scanned the horizon. A maze of fishing buoys floated ahead, marking shallow waters. "Hold on," she said, veering sharp toward them. The skiff darted between the buoys, their ropes swaying in the current. The patrol boat followed, its engine roaring louder. The spotlight swung wildly, bouncing off the water. Lila weaved left, then right, the skiff tilting dangerously. The buoy scraped the hull, but she kept control. Edith gripped the rail, her voice steady. "They can't follow us too close here, too risky for their size." Lila nodded, her focus razor-sharp. The patrol boat slowed, its captain wary of the shallows, but it didn't stop. A crack split the air, something whizzed past Lila's ear, splashing into the water. "They're shooting!" she yelled. Edith ducked lower, shoving the folder under her coat. "Keep moving, they want us sunk." Lila swerved again, dodging another shot. The harbour was close now, wooden piers stretching out, lined with cranes and stacks of crates. She aimed for a gap between two docks, the skiff's engine whining under the strain. The patrol boat gained ground, its spotlight pinning them in place. A third shot punched a hole in the skiff's side, water seeping in fast. Lila didn't hesitate. She drove the boat straight for the pier, ramming it into a pile of nets. The impact threw them forward. "Jump!" she shouted. Edith scrambled over the side, landing hard on the dock. Lila followed, her knees jarring against the wood. The skiff sank behind them, swallowed by the tide. The patrol boat slowed, its crew yelling as they maneuvered to dock. Lila grabbed Edith's arm, pulling her up. "We've got to run." Edith limped beside her, the folder still secure. They darted into the harbour, weaving through rows of barrels and coiled ropes. The town buzzed around them. Late-night workers unloading cargo, a horn blaring from a ship. Lila led Edith toward a warehouse, its metal doors rusted but open. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and fish. They ducked behind a stack of wooden pallets, catching their breath. Footsteps echoed outside. Victor's men, closing in. Edith pulled a pen from her pocket and scribbled an address on the folder. "Clara's office, 3 streets over. You'll know it." Red brick, green sign. Lila took the folder, her hands trembling. "What about you?" Edith's eyes hardened. "I'll slow them down. They'll think I've still got it." Lila shook her head. "No, you're hurt. They'll—" Edith cut her off. "Go. I've lived long enough to know how to handle myself. Get that to Clara." Before Lila could argue, a man's voice shouted nearby. "Check the warehouse." Edith shoved her toward a side exit. "Now!" Lila bolted, clutching the folder as she slipped through the door. The streets were narrow, lined with old shops and flickering lamps. Lila ran, her sneakers slapping the pavement. She dodged a cart stacked with crates, her breath burning in her lungs. The red brick building came into view, a green sign reading, "Done Legal Services" above the door. She pounded on it, glancing over her shoulder. No one yet, but they'd be close. The door creaked open, revealing a woman with short grey hair and sharp eyes. Clara. "Who are you?" she demanded. Lila thrust the folder forward. "From Edith Carver. She's in trouble. Victor's after her." Clara snatched the papers, flipping through them fast. Her expression shifted from confusion to grim understanding. "Get inside," she said, pulling Lila in and locking the door. The office was small, cluttered with files and a humming computer. Clara grabbed her phone, dialing as she read. "This is done. I need the sheriff at the harbour now. Attempted murder, theft, the works. I've got proof." She hung up, turning to Lila. "Where's Edith?" Lila pointed west. "Warehouse by the docks. She stayed to buy me time." Clara grabbed her coat. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me." She rushed out, leaving Lila alone. The girl sank into a chair, her legs shaky. She'd made it, but Edith was still out there. Minutes ticked by, each one heavy. Then, headlights flashed through the window. Lila peeked out. A sheriff's truck rolled up, followed by Clara's car. Relief hit her, but it was short-lived. A black van screeched around the corner. Victor's men, back again. They'd tracked her. The door rattled. Leela grabbed a letter opener from the desk, her pulse racing. A man's voice came through, low and cold. "Open it, kid, or we break it down." She backed toward a filing cabinet, ready to fight. Suddenly, sirens wailed nearby. The rattling stopped, replaced by the sound of tires peeling out. The sheriff's deputies stormed the street, shouting orders. Leela dropped the opener, her hands shaking. She'd held her ground, just like Edith said. Clara returned, her face flushed. "They've got Edith. She's banged up but alive. Deputies caught 2 of Victor's crew at the docks." Leela exhaled, sinking back into the chair. "And Victor?" Clara's lips thinned. "Still out there. But these papers, he's finished. Courts will have him by dawn." Leela nodded, the weight of the night settling in. She'd done it. The proof was safe and Edith was alive, but Victor wouldn't give up easy. This wasn't over yet. Lila sat in Clara's office, the letter opener still on the floor where she'd dropped it. The room hummed with tension, the faint sound of sirens fading outside. Clara stood by the window, peering through the blinds as the sheriff's truck rolled away. She turned back to Leela, her grey hair catching the desk lamp's light. "Edith's on her way to the hospital. Deputies have her safe. Victor's men scattered when the law showed up." Leela's shoulders relaxed slightly, but her eyes stayed sharp. "What about Victor? He's not caught yet?" Clara sat down, spreading the folder's papers across her desk. "Not yet, but this, dates, payments, orders to sabotage Carver shipping. It's a net he can't slip through. I've sent copies to the judge already. Warrants are out." Leela leaned forward, her voice low. "He won't stop. He knows Edith's alive now. He'll come for her again." Clara nodded, her fingers tapping a ledger. "That's why we're moving fast. Sheriff's raiding his warehouse by the pier tonight. If he's there, they'll grab him." A knock rattled the door. Lila tensed, but Clara waved her down. "It's fine." She opened it, revealing Sam, his shirt torn and his knuckles red. Lila jumped up. "Sam?" He stepped inside, breathing hard. "Took down one guy at the pier, lost the other in the dunes. Trucks parked a block over. Didn't want them tailing me." Clara locked the door behind him. "You're the brother?" Sam nodded. "Yeah." "Leela, you okay?" She hugged him quick. "I got the papers to Clara. Edith's safe, but Victor's still out there." Sam rubbed his jaw, glancing at the desk. "This his mess?" Clara handed him a page, a map of shipping lanes marked with red X's. "Victor sold these to Horizon Freight. Planned to sink a Carver ship next month for a payout. Edith caught him before he could pull it off." Sam whistled. "Guy's bold. What now?" Clara stood, grabbing her keys. "I'm meeting the sheriff at the warehouse. You two stay here. Victor's desperate. He might try something stupid." Leela shook her head. "I'm coming. I started this. I want to see it end." Sam frowned. "Lila, you've done enough." But Clara cut in. "She's earned it. Stay close, though." Sam sighed, giving in. They piled into Clara's car, a sturdy sedan with papers stuffed in the back seat. The drive was short, the town streets quiet except for the distant hum of the harbour. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking metal structure by the water's edge. Sheriff's trucks lined the lot, lights flashing. Deputies moved in, kicking open side doors. Clara parked behind a stack of crates, keeping them out of sight. Lila watched through the windshield. Men in dark jackets bolted from the warehouse, scattering like ants. Shots rang out, deputies firing warning rounds. One figure stood out, tall and slick-haired, barking orders as he ran for a jeep. "That's him," Leela said, pointing. "Victor." Clara gripped the wheel. "He's making a break for it." The jeep's engine roared to life, tires spinning as it peeled toward the road. Sam leaned forward. "He's heading for the cliffs." Clara floored it, tailing the jeep at a distance. The sheriff's trucks followed, sirens blaring. Leela held the seat, her mind racing. Victor knew the cliffs, knew where he'd pushed Edith. He might try to vanish there. The road twisted upward, gravel crunching under the sedan's tires. The jeep swerved ahead, gaining ground. Then it veered off, cutting through a field toward the cliff's edge. Clara slowed, keeping the headlights on him. "He's cornered himself," she said. Sam frowned. "Or he's got a plan." The jeep stopped yards from the drop, dust swirling in its wake. Victor jumped out, a bag slung over his shoulder. He ran for the cliff, disappearing down a path Leela hadn't noticed before. Deputies pulled up, fanning out with flashlights. Clara parked and they climbed out. "Stay behind me," she told Lila and Sam, leading them to the edge. The path was steep, carved into the rock, leading to a cave mouth below. Lila's stomach flipped. "He's hiding in there," a deputy shouted from the trail. "Got tracks. He's inside." The sheriff waved his team down, guns drawn. Clara followed, motioning Lila and Sam to stay put. But Lila crept closer, peering over the edge. The cave glowed faintly. Victor had a light. She heard his voice, muffled but angry, talking to someone on a phone. "Get the boat ready. I'm not done yet." Sam grabbed her arm. "You're not going down there." Leela pulled free. "He's escaping. We can't let him." Before Sam could stop her, she slid down the path, sticking to the shadows. The cave smelled of damp stone and seaweed, its walls slick with moisture. Victor stood near the back, a lantern at his feet, stuffing papers from his bag into a metal box. A tunnel stretched beyond him, faint waves echoing through it, a sea exit. Lila ducked behind a rock, her breath shallow. He was burning evidence again, just like at the mansion. She had to act. She grabbed a loose stone and hurled it past him. It clattered against the tunnel wall. Victor spun, dropping the lighter. "Who's there?" he snarled, pulling a knife from his belt. Leela stayed still, her pulse hammering. Footsteps echoed, the deputies closing in. Victor cursed, grabbing the box and bolting for the tunnel. Leela darted after him, staying low. The tunnel opened to a rocky shore, a speedboat waiting in the water. Victor splashed toward it, the box under his arm. Leela shouted, "He's here!" Deputies stormed out, flashlights blinding. Victor turned, his face twisted with rage. He swung the knife, but a deputy tackled him, pinning him to the sand. The box fell, papers spilling into the surf. Sam reached Leela, yanking her back. "You're insane," he said, breathless. Clara arrived, panting. "But she's right. We've got him." The sheriff cuffed Victor, dragging him up as he yelled, "This isn't over." The deputies ignored him, hauling him to the truck. Clara picked up a soaked page from the sand. A signed deal with Horizon Freight. "It's over for him," she said, handing it to the sheriff. Leela watched Victor's glare as he was loaded into the vehicle. He'd lost, but his eyes promised revenge. Sam put an arm around her. "You did good, kid. Let's go home." The night settled, the cave quiet again. Leela nodded, but she knew this victory came with a shadow. Victor wouldn't forget her face. The sheriff's truck rumbled away from the cliffs, Victor's furious shouts fading into the night. Lila stood on the rocky shore, the sea lapping at her sneakers. Sam kept his arm around her, his grip firm but shaky. Clara held the soaked page from Victor's box, her coat flapping in the breeze. Deputies combed the cave, pulling out drenched papers and a radio Victor had used to call his boat. The speedboat bobbed in the shallows, abandoned now. Lila's eyes stayed on the horizon, where the town's lights flickered. They'd won, but her chest felt tight. Clara turned to them, her voice steady. "Sheriff's taking him to the station. With this evidence, plus what you brought me, he's facing years. Embezzlement, attempted murder, sabotage. Edith's safe at the hospital now." Sam nodded, his jaw tight. "Good. Let's get out of here." Leela followed them up the path, her legs heavy. The cave's damp air clung to her as they climbed back to the sedan. Deputies sealed off the tunnel, their radios crackling with updates. Victor was gone, but his glare burned in her memory. The drive back was quiet. Clara dropped them at the truck, still parked near the warehouse. "I'll handle the courts tomorrow," she said, handing Sam her card. "Call if you need me." Sam tucked it in his pocket. "Thanks for everything." Lila climbed into the truck, the folder's weight replaced by exhaustion. Sam started the engine and they rolled home, the road empty under a starlit sky. The house waited, its weathered walls a comfort after the chaos. Sam locked the door behind them, checking the windows twice. Leela sank onto the couch, her jacket still damp. Sam sat beside her, rubbing his bruised knuckles. You scared me tonight, running after him like that. Leela looked at him. I had to. He was getting away, Sam sighed, leaning back. Yeah, well, you're tougher than me, kid. Always have been. She managed a small smile, but her mind churned. Victor knew her now. He'd seen her face in the cave's light. Sleep wouldn't come easy tonight. Morning brought a grey dawn. Sam brewed coffee, the kitchen filling with its bitter scent. Leela sat at the table, flipping through a local paper Clara had dropped off. The headline screamed, Carver shipping heir arrested in daring plot. Photos showed Victor in cuffs, his slick hair mussed, and Edith in a hospital bed, her expression fierce despite the bandages. The story praised an unnamed girl who'd helped crack the case. Leela's name wasn't there, but she felt exposed anyway. A knock jolted her. Sam opened the door, revealing a Deputy Young with a clipped mustache. Morning, he said, tipping his hat. Sheriff sent me. Victor's locked up tight, but he's talking. Says he's got friends who'll finish what he started. Sam crossed his arms. Meaning what? The deputy shifted. Threats, mostly. We're watching his crew, but keep your eyes open. He handed Sam a card with a number. Call if anything feels off. Sam took it, shutting the door with a frown. Lila set the paper down. He's not giving up, is he? Sam shook his head. Guys like him don't. But we've got the law now, and Clara... He poured her a glass of water. You did your part, let them handle the rest. Lila nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. Victor's friends could be anywhere. Horizon Freight, his warehouse crew, even strangers he'd paid off. She'd painted a target on herself, and Sam too. That afternoon, Edith called from the hospital. Sam put her on speaker, her voice crackling through. Leela, Sam, I owe you everything. Victor's done. Courts are fast-tracking the case. I'm pressing charges from my bed. Leela leaned closer. You're okay? Edith chuckled, rough but warm. Ribs are cracked, but I'm alive, thanks to you. Hospital's got guards. Victor's not touching me here. Sam asked, what about his threats? Deputy said he's got people. Edith's tone hardened. He's bluffing. His crew's running scared. Horizon Freight's cutting ties after the news hit. Leela wasn't convinced. He saw me, Edith, in the cave. The line went quiet for a beat. Then you're careful, Edith said. But don't let him win by hiding. You're stronger than he'll ever be. The call ended, leaving Leela staring at the phone. Sam ruffled her hair. She's right. We keep living. He doesn't get to ruin that. Lila forced a nod, but her eyes drifted to the window, scanning the yard. Days passed, tense but calm. Sam went back to the docks, his shifts longer now to cover repairs on the truck. Leela stayed home, sketching again. Gulls, waves, the cliffs where it all started. Her pencil moved fast, but her ears stayed sharp, catching every creak of the house. One evening, as dusk settled, a shadow crossed the porch. Leela dropped her sketchbook, peering out. A man stood there, thin, in a dark cap, holding a package. He knocked, sharp and loud. She grabbed a broom, heart racing, and cracked the door. "Who are you?" The man tipped his cap, his voice mild. "Delivery, from Edith Carver." He held out the box. No label, just her name scrawled on top. Leela hesitated, then took it, shutting the door fast. She waited until his footsteps faded, then opened it. Inside was a leather journal, a check for $10,000, and a note. For Lila and Sam, keep drawing, you've got a future ahead. E.C. The journal's first page had a sketch of the cliffs, signed by Edith. Sam got home late, finding Leela with the box. He read the note, his eyes widening at the check. "She's serious, huh?" Leela handed him the journal. "She wants us to be okay, after everything." Sam set it down, his voice soft. "We will be. This money, her trust, it's a start." Lila nodded, but her gaze flicked to the window again. The calm felt fragile, like glass waiting to crack. Next morning, the radio buzzed with news. Victor's trial had begun, his lawyer scrambling against the mountain of evidence. Witnesses piled up. Warehouse workers, a Horizon freight exec, even the boat captain from the cave. Lila listened, her coffee cooling. The announcer said Victor sat stone-faced, his threats empty now. She wanted to believe it. But as she stepped outside, a black car rolled past the house, slow and deliberate. It didn't stop, but its engine lingered in her ears. Victor was locked away, but his shadow stretched long. The black car's engine faded down the street, leaving Lila frozen on the porch. Her sketchbook lay inside, forgotten beside Edith's journal. The morning air was cool, but sweat prickled her neck. Sam stepped out, coffee mug in hand, catching her stare. "What's wrong?" he asked, following her gaze. Lila pointed where the car had been. It drove by, slow, like it was watching. Sam set his mug down, his face tightening. Could be nothing. Delivery guy, maybe. But his tone wavered. They both knew better. Inside, the radio droned on about Victor's trial. A warehouse worker testified he'd seen Victor torch documents, tying him to the sabotage plot. Lila turned it up, needing the noise to steady her. Sam grabbed his keys. "I'm calling that deputy. Get his take." He dialed the number from the card, pacing the kitchen. "Yeah, this is Sam. Saw a black car lingering by our place. Any word on Victor's crew?" The deputy's voice crackled back. "We've got 3 in custody, but some slipped the net. Stay sharp. I'll send a patrol." Sam hung up, his jaw set. "They're checking it out. You're sticking close today, Lila." She nodded, but her mind raced. Victor's reach stretched beyond bars. The check from Edith sat on the table. $10,000. A lifeline, but it felt like bait now, drawing eyes to their rundown house. She grabbed the journal, flipping to Edith's sketch of the cliffs. It grounded her, a reminder of why she'd fought. By noon, a patrol truck rolled past, its deputy scanning the street. No black car returned. Sam relaxed a fraction, heading to the docks for his shift. "Lock up tight," he said, ruffling Lila's hair. "I'll be back before dark." Alone, Lila bolted the door, her pencil moving over a fresh page. Waves crashing, a boat sinking. Drawing kept her hands busy, her ears alert. The house creaked, each sound sharp against the quiet. A thud hit the back door. Lila dropped her pencil, grabbing the broom again. She crept to the kitchen, peering through the curtain. A man stood there, broad, in a grey jacket, a crowbar dangling from his hand. He jimmied the lock, muttering, "Kid's here somewhere." Lila's breath caught, one of Victor's men hunting her. She backed away, scanning for a weapon. The check and journal glared from the table, proof they knew where she lived. The lock clicked. Lila darted to the hall, yanking open a closet. She squeezed inside, pulling the door shut as boots thudded into the kitchen. The man's voice growled, "Come out, girl, make this easy." Drawers banged open, papers rustling. He was searching for Edith's gift. Anything to tie them to Victor's downfall. Lila held her breath, the broom's handle slick in her grip. A phone rang. His. "Yeah, it's me," he said. "She's not here. Place is empty. I'll torch it and go." Torch it. Her home, Sam's work, all they had. Lila's fear turned hot. She couldn't let him. The man stepped closer, his shadow sliding under the closet door. She kicked it open, swinging the broom hard. It cracked against his knee. He stumbled, cursing, and dropped the crowbar. Lila bolted past him, snatching the journal and check from the table. He lunged, grabbing her jacket. She twisted free, racing for the front door. It flew open. "Sam!" Home early, fists clenched. "Get off her!" he roared, tackling the man to the floor. They wrestled, Sam pinning him as Lila ran outside. The patrol truck screeched up, deputies piling out. "Down! Now!" one yelled, cuffing the man as he spat threats. "Victor's got more coming!" Sam stood, breathless, pulling Lila close. "You okay?" She nodded, clutching the journal. The deputy hauled the man to the truck. "Caught him, red hand. Arson, breaking in. Adds to Victor's tab." Lila handed Sam the check. "He wanted this. Proof we helped Edith." The deputy radioed in. "Another one off the street. House is secure." Sam locked the door, his arm around Lila. "That's the last of them breaking in here." The afternoon faded. deputies lingering to sweep the yard. Clara called later, her voice crisp. Victor's trial wrapped today. Guilty on all counts. Life, no parole. His crew's crumbling. You're safe now. Lila exhaled, the weight lifting. Edith followed with her own call, weaker but warm. You two are family to me. I'm out tomorrow. Come visit. Next day they drove to the hospital, the truck rattling over the coastal road. Edith waited in a wheelchair, her ribs taped but her eyes bright. She hugged Lila tight. You saved more than me, girl. Carver shipping's mine again, clean now. Sam grinned. She's a hero, huh? Edith handed Lila a new sketchbook, leather-bound. For your talent. And Sam, that check's just the start. I'm funding a new boat for you. No more dock grunt work. They laughed, the tension gone. Back home, Lila sat on the porch, sketching the sea. The black car never returned. Victor's threats died with his empire, his men rounded up or running. The radio buzzed with his sentencing. Life behind bars. Horizon freight fined into ruin. Lila's pencil traced a gull in flight, free and bold. Sam joined her, a soda in hand. New boat next week? What's next for you? She smiled, flipping to a blank page. More sketches. Maybe school, like Edith said. A week later, Edith pulled up in a modest car, no longer the frail woman from the cliff. She carried a box, fishing gear for Sam, art supplies for Lila. I'm rebuilding, she said. You're part of it. They sat together, watching the waves. Lila thought back to that day. The push, the ledge, the chase. She'd been scared, but she'd acted. That choice changed everything. The journal rested beside her, its pages filling with new drawings. Victor was a memory now, locked away. The cliff stood silent, the sea endless. Lila leaned back, the sun warm on her face. She'd faced a storm and come out stronger. Sam nudged her. Proud of you, kid. Edith nodded. Me too. The future stretched ahead, wide and open. Lila picked up her pencil. She was ready for it.